Hello, everyone. Welcome to Achieving Success with Olivia Atkin. I'm your host, Olivia Atkin. Each week, we will discuss the roadmap of achieving your personal and professional success. We will give you real-life stories on growing personally and professionally to achieve your life and career goals with the help of some top-notch guests. Today, we are speaking with Peter Warmka. Peter is the founder and CEO of Counterintelligence Institute. The Counterintelligence Institute assists corporations, government offices, academic institutions, and nonprofit organizations in the protection of their proprietary information and personal data against security breach attempts. In addition, Peter is the author of the novel Confessions of a CIA Spy and the novel Why Are You Messing With Me? Prior to his current roles, Peter was a CIA spy for 23 years. You can find Peter on LinkedIn by searching Peter Warmka or by going to his website, www.counterintelligence-institute.com, or by emailing him at pgwarmka@counterintelligence-institute.com. Hello, Peter. It's fantastic having you on the show today.
Hi, Olivia. Thank you so much for the invitation to appear on a podcast, and I'm very excited to be here.
I've been looking forward to this one for a while. So this is definitely the highlight, and we are starting off the second year of achieving success with your episode. So I think it's going to be a great way to kick off year 2 with the podcast. To start off the show, can you tell me what success means and looks like to Peter Warmka?
Good question. For me, success is finding that internal happiness and peace through, I think, balance in life, both from a professional standpoint, your career and what you want to accomplish professionally, but also your personal, in my case, family life, right? I'm married and I have 3 children, and I think through stages in life, you put more emphasis on one or the other, but at the end, you really want to feel that you've been successful across the board. And actually, it reminds me of this movie. They always play it at the end of the year. It's a Wonderful Life. To me, it's just so true because we don't really reflect upon the impact we have on people necessarily, right? What legacy are we leaving behind? In that movie, I'm sure most, if not all, of your audience has seen it. You have an individual that thinks he's a failure at one point and wants to commit suicide. And there is an angel that comes back and wants to show what would the world be like if he never existed. And it's amazing. So many things would be different. His impact, legacy that he's left, that he's grown for his family and for the community is tremendous. So for me, it's sort of like wanting to leave behind a legacy that's going to be, make the world a little bit better, at least in my small way, because we can have positive impacts and we can have negative impacts, right? But hopefully most of mine will be positive. But to me, that's what success is. We have a small time on this planet. Can we make things a little bit better for others?
And I love that answer. And it's really true. And one thing I liked that you point out there is that we all make an impact. And it could either be a positive impact or negative impact. And it goes into the aspect of every decision has a reaction. And we have to understand that and take that into account, that your decision, whether it is a decision or you're just not making a decision, has an impact and puts kind of the direction that we all go to, because everything has a reaction. And I want to start off with your journey and really at the beginning, because it's so interesting and such a journey and a different perspective than a lot of different individuals have. And you talked about making that positive impact, which I certainly think you have continued to do in every different aspect as you've grown throughout your career, in the different things, whether it's your book, being a CIA agent, or working with organizations now, helping them with counterintelligence. But, how did you start and become a CIA agent?
From the beginning, huh? Because
No,
we
work
can
on
see
that.
things way back. We start reflecting about, if I would have done something a little different, how I would be in a totally different place, right? So if we want to go way back, I think what really got me interested in the possibility of living and working abroad would have been that when I was in high school, I went to a seminary. I was thinking about being a priest, and it was a seminary run by the Capuchin uh, missionaries. They had missions in Nicaragua. They invited me to go to Nicaragua to see what the life was like as a missionary. And so I went in 1977, and I returned with a small group. I returned in 1979, and I was caught up at it was the revolution of the Sandinistas overthrew the Somoza dictatorship. And so I saw all this transition, and it was just like opened my eyes to so many things, because that was the first time that I was out of the state of Wisconsin, and I go to Nicaragua and I see these things. So I I wanted to work in Latin America in some capacity. I eventually decided to uh, leave my studies in the priesthood, but I decided, what am I going to study? I ended up getting a master's degree in international business management from Thunderbird. Some of your audience might have heard of it. And I decided, let me try to get a job in international banking, because that will be a stepping stone for me to probably move into Latin America, whether I continue in banking or I end up working for some international companies. So I, luckily, make a long story short, I got hired by a bank in Miami, and my hope was that I was going to get transferred. They had a lot of operations throughout Latin America, and I was hoping that I would get transferred. After 4 years, hadn't happened. I got very itchy elbows. I decided to apply for other positions with banks. Had quite a few interviews, but then there was this. I saw this we call blind ad. I think it was in the Wall Street Journal. We mean by blind ad is sort of like it's kind of like indirect way to kind of like recruit you by the CIA. It mentioned opportunity. There was this investment group that was expanding operations overseas, looking for individuals who had experience living or traveling overseas, who spoke foreign languages, and et cetera. And I said, wow, this kind of it's enticing, right? So I'm going to send my resume to them, and then I got this letter back saying, "Thank you so much. We would like to forward your resume to one of our clients in the government, U.S. government." And I'm thinking, that isn't. I've never wanted to work for the government. I wanted to work for the private sector. So I think I thought this is really hokey. I didn't respond. I put the letter underneath my night table. And maybe 2, 3 months later, my wife said, whatever happened to that letter? And I said, well, I don't know. It was very strange. I haven't responded. It's there somewhere. And she says, well, why don't you respond? And I said, well, it's already too late. They said I needed to respond within 2 weeks. She said, send it in anyway. So to this day, I say that she was responsible for nagging me into the career. But anyways, so I sent the letter in, and within a couple weeks, I'm coming back to my home. This is the day prior to cellular phones, right? We only had landline. So I get home. My wife says, "Hey, they called you from Washington." I said, "Who?" They said they wouldn't say, but they're going to call you back at exactly 6. Okay. So I answered the phone at exactly 6, and the gentleman on the line identified himself as being with the CIA, and we ended up having a chat for over an hour. Most of it was one way. I think they were trying to find out as much information about my background to see whether or not there were any potentially serious issues with getting the security, passing a security check, right, for getting a clearance. But they fed me a little bit of information, and they said, "Are you interested in the possibility of working for them? We have a lot of positions overseas." And I said, "Sure." So they sent me out a packet by UPS. It was an envelope filled with all kinds of documents that I had to complete, from psychological exams to a sampling of my theses, to a lot of biographic information, et cetera. Sent that in. Then I got called back to for I thought it was going to be an interview, and it was in a hotel room. And this guy told me, go down to room number, whatever, 2 floors below, and it was a polygraph. So I had to take a polygraph on the spot. And then when, fortunately, I passed the poly, and then they told me, now we can tell you everything about the opportunities. So they told me about the opportunities, and they said, if you're interested, we will go forward with the interview process. And that was another week trip back, this time with my wife accompanying me. from Monday to Friday, full day of interviews, and went back home, and I had to come back again for one more session of interviews, and then I wait the phone call, and they then when I got that phone call, they said, "Congratulations, you can start in the training class that's starting in a few months." So that's how I was recruited in the organization, and then I had to go through training, and then I had a 20-plus year career with the organization. So that's how I got in. But as initially as I said, that was the thing. I had never even thought I would be working for the federal government.
And you said a few things that were really telling in anyone's journey, right? Whether it's working for the CIA or any government company or going corporate or starting your own business. Sometimes looking back, for you, it was your wife. You had said, "Oh, I'm not gonna do this. It's too late." Um, you just put it aside. And she was like, "Just send it in. See
Yeah,
what the results are." And that led to the career that you had and really your passions and your journey and every impact, a lot of impact that you've made stems from that decision. And I think it's important to highlight the fact that sometimes it's someone just saying, why not give it the shot? Why not? Like, what do you have to lose that really then projects you down a whole trajectory of decisions and life experiences that you wouldn't have had?
absolutely. And there was even another along my journey before I went to grad school. I had a pretty good job, but it was a part-time job, but it was well paying. And if I could get a full-time job with this organization, it would have paid a really, really good salary. And so I had people saying why are you going I had people say, don't waste your time going to graduate school. Soon the position is going to be opening, and you're going to be happy. We've done this for 35 years. And to me, it was very mundane work. I don't want to mention what it was, but to me, it was very mundane. And I thought, I don't want to do this for 20 years or 30 years working I want to get this degree and see where it takes me. So yeah, it's something you're going to have people that are going to say, why not? And there's going to be people that are going to say, that don't waste your time. Right.
Exactly. And like you had mentioned, you spent over 20 years with the CIA. And like any company or organizations, there can be many different roles to that. And you can be, for example, with the CIA, a field officer, you can be at a desk all day, you can be recruiting. There's so many different roles and so many different aspects of any company or organization. The interesting part, and you brought this up in the beginning, you have a wife, you have kids, and you had a spouse even before going into the CIA. But the interesting part that I want to highlight here is that you spent 20 years of your career as a field agent. And as you brought up, an overseas field agent. So, what was that journey like transitioning from making the decision, going through the process, obviously, getting your position, and then spending almost your whole career, 2 decades in the field while also managing that home life and that, how that intertwines?
Uh, it's sort of it's a process, of course. And in my particular case, you don't really know where you're going. I mean, you have this idea of what you're going, but there's so much that you learn along the way that, if you would be at the very beginning and know what you're going to encounter, you maybe think, well, I don't know if I want to go, I don't know if I want to, risk everything and do this because, I mean, it may sound silly, but for me, I never would tell a lie. But all of a sudden, I entered into a position. If you're going to work as we refer to them as case officers being sent overseas. If we're going to be doing that, we have our cover. I mean, we don't go around telling people we work for the CIA because
Mhm.
nobody would speak to us, of course. So we use a cover, and so in the process of using cover, we end up having to tell a lot of lies. You know, and in the beginning, that was even kind of a challenge. I felt really guilty about telling a lie until I realized I'm doing this, but in my mind, it was for a greater cause, right? I have to do some of these things that maybe would they be, ethical? per se. If you were just looking at black and white, probably say no. But in light of what the objectives were, the mission, they were. So I think a lot of it was sort of the curiosity and the adventure part of me. I like to take risks, measured risks. And so going and living in other countries, and it was always an adventure. I would be in a place for 2, 3, 4 years, and then I'll pack up and move again. And that is, it takes energy, but I just enjoyed the process learning. I mean, you could be in one job, let's say, in any career, or living in one city for your entire life. But for me, everything changed, even sort of the nature of the work that I was doing as a CIA officer in a new country. The children also, I mean, I think they got a lot of difficult challenges, but a lot of benefits with living overseas because they lived in 4 different countries. They speak 4 different languages: Spanish, English, which is their native tongues, and then Portuguese and French. And that, I mean, they sometimes they wish they would have more roots, but at the same time, now they have friends literally because of social media. Um, they have friends from all these countries that were their childhood friends, and they get together a lot, they converse a lot, and for them, it's been a fantastic experience. Fortunately for me, I have a fantastic wife who also shouldered a lot of the burden of making sure that the kids were fine, that all the domestic things that needed to be done were taken care of. So it didn't, it freed me up a bit to really focus on my job. And I mean, once I'm laser focused, and I just no 2 days were the same. For me, it was every day was different. Every day presented unique challenges, and so it was just I was just fascinated by the work. To be honest with you.
For you, and we talked about the benefits that have come from your kids getting different experiences. And like you said, a lot of people, some people, I don't want to say a lot, but a percentage of people spend their whole life in a certain area or don't get those experiences of different cultures and really living and breathing those cultures. But for you, there was also the aspect of not, like you said, not everyone knew what you were doing. So what was the conversation like, and who did you tell that you were going or you were part of the CIA? And then how did you also, and when was the moment that you then also told your kids?
Yeah, the only person outside of the organization that knew I worked for the CIA was my spouse for the first couple of years. And while I was domestic, once I went overseas, they recommended tell someone else in your family in case there's an emergency. There's a point of contact that we can reach out to who's going to know this is true versus what, you know. So they told me I could choose whoever I wanted. So I decided to tell my father, very patriotic man, and I thought his reaction was going to be, "That's fantastic." When I told him, he said, "I wish you wouldn't have told me, and don't tell your mother." It was more of a fear, and he was concerned for my safety, because a lot of these things, people get this impression of the CIA by watching movies, right?
Mhm.
And some of this stuff is outlandish. But so he was concerned that my life would be in danger, that maybe I would be called on to do assassin. I mean, because he asked me once, "Have you ever conducted assassination?" I said, "No, Dad, I never have and never will." But so he was the only one and knew. And of course, secrecy is a burden. So it became a burden for him also to, people would ask how I'm doing, what I'm doing. And he had to kind of like lie as well, right? To kind of like protect my cover. And it wasn't until, shortly before he died, and when he was 96 years old, I think he became I don't know. Either he was, I think he knew that his time was limited and he wanted to make sure there were other people in the family that knew, because he told some of my siblings and they're looking at him like, he's losing it. He's got dementia. But I think he did that because he didn't tell everybody. It was just like my siblings. And 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 so that's when my siblings found out. And it was shortly before actually I retired anyway, so that didn't really matter. And then when I retired, one of the things I decided to do prior to retiring, because I knew I had to transition to something, right? So it was very important for me to be able to retire and be able to say that I worked for the CIA, because the vast majority of people who retire can't or won't, say that they work for the organization. Some of them can't just because of the cover equity. So I'm able to say that I really wanted to make sure before I left that I got their approval so that I can leverage that as far as who I am and my experience. Otherwise, it's like, you have a very disjointed resume about where you've been and what you've done, but there's nothing that makes sense. If you want to transition to, I'll say a private sector job. So that's when I pretty much broke cover to the outside world, and now everybody knows, whoever looks at my background, of course.
And, you keep bringing up the impact it has online and that in the beginning, it really took you some time to get comfortable with that. Totally know how that feels. I joke with my friends, I am not the person that will ever lie. I can't lie. And people ask me like, "You could lie." And I'm like, "Well, maybe in text or like if I don't have to see you." But people who watch the show, they know I have red hair. And the running joke is, when I go to lie, my face gradually turns as red as my hair, and I hysterically laugh through the whole conversation. So that is a big tell of, and you really can't get past it. That being said, I totally understand because I can't lie to save my life.
It
Um,
got easier after a period of time. Now it's very easy.
mhm.
Not that I do it very much, but I mean, if I don't have to anymore.
For you, what were, you know, in your job, can you tell us a little bit about what you did? The bird's eye view, because you and I have had the discussion. You can't
Yeah.
obviously go into detail, but then what skills, whether they were personally or professionally, that you were able to leverage and that have helped you, identify different things or have conversations with people?
Mhm. Well, as a case officer sent overseas, my responsibilities was to collect intelligence, right? So you collect intelligence by recruiting and handling sources. So I would go overseas and sometimes be assigned, a certain number of sources who are already in the books and providing this information. And so you're looking to, you know, keep them very productive and keep the relationship very clandestine, secret. But my forte, I found, was kind of be the hunter, the spot, the assess, the develop, recruit, and handle my sources, and I became very good at that. So the spotting aspect requires you to be kind of like out and about, to meet people. You can like cold call people, which is not easy, but you can do it. You have a right pretext to get together with them. But a lot of this sort of like we call it trolling, going to events, whether it's social events or conferences or trade shows, places where these targets may be, right?
Mhm.
I don't know if I mentioned to you, I am an introvert. And for me, it was kind of a not a struggle, but I don't like. I mean, if I don't have to, I don't like going to these events. I don't like it. I don't care about going to socials. I'd rather be at home, having a nice glass of wine, reading the book. But when I have a mission, let's say, and I gotta meet somebody there, maybe somebody even specific that I know who's going to be there. I turn it on, and it's just like I'm full of energy, and I'm laser focused on this particular individual or individuals, and and almost always I will accomplish, meeting that person and getting a follow-up meeting with that individual so that we can continue our conversation and you build that relationship with that person over a period of several meetings. You develop sort of a social life with this individual, gaining their trust. You have to learn everything about them. What makes them tick as an individual? What are their vulnerabilities? What are their motivations? And I prefer to focus on motivations because at the end of the day, when I'm trying to get this individual to assist me, I want to be able to ensure that this person's getting one or more of their needs met. That they're going into this not just because we're friends or whatever, but because I'm giving them something that's really going to be beneficial to their family. So it's sort of a mutual. Right, guys, because if you are focusing on vulnerabilities, some intelligence services do that and they look to like coercion or blackmail. I'd rather have someone working to me who's loyal versus someone that, you know, who's not loyal, but is afraid or you feels like got them. So it was always about making that connection, learning about them, building up that rapport, developing that friendship, and then entering into a relationship where they begin to assist you. And how I trans, how I for people that are not involved really in the intelligence world, how I sort of um, bring this out into the layman's terms is my role was to target and penetrate organizations, breach their security to obtain the information that I was after.
And I
And
want, oh, sorry.
no, and so to do that, it was important to leverage the insiders, right? So I was targeting insiders. I mean, this is the kind of things that we talk about in the private sector, right? Insiders and insider threats and targeting those insiders to breach the security. I did that for over 20 years as a case officer.
And there's a lot of different moving pieces to that. And like you said earlier, it's building the connection and making sure they're comfortable. And that really transcends into many different aspects, and no matter your role or profession, but even personal lives. And we've talked about the importance of emotional intelligence in that, and being able to read body language and being able to read tone and comfortability. How and what would you recommend to someone's that how they can read tone and body language to really see if someone's comfortable with something or not, and maybe be faking it?
Mhm. Well, one of the tools that we had to learn and perfect over a period of time that's sometimes what a good salesman does, right? I mean, they're able to elicit information from people, moving the conversation. They have their objectives. I need to find out X, Y, Z about this person, and so you're moving the conversation along in a way that that person doesn't suspect any ulterior motives. They feel it's a great conversation, and so you're learning about them, you're learning about their work, you're learning about their access, you're learning about what's the important things in their life through that type of conversation with them, and you can kind of detect in that conversation um, a number of things. First of all, what kind of question are they asking questions or not that show that they're a little bit uneasy with what you're asking them. But unfortunately, sometimes you don't a person might be really, really suspicious, but not ask a question. They're just in kind of like the receive mode. They're nodding their head, smiling, but then they're going away and saying, that is a really weird conversation. And so one of the things I always try to do is front load the things that I say so that that person understands, in their mind, why I'm asking this information. It makes perfect sense. Giving, what my comment was or what my question I have is, why am I asking this? I try to front load it versus and then walking away like with these doubts. But then you have that, of course, the body language, and there's a number of things. It's going to be, you know, their comfort or discomfort level. If they seem very comfortable and relaxed, that's a really good sign, right? If they're smiling, if they're nodding their head, that's also, a great sign, a good sign. If they're kind of like looking away and kind of like, maybe fidgeting with something, that shows that it's a sign of nervousness, right? If they're, oh, this is kind of interesting. If they're kind of like looking around to see who's near them before they comment to you, it's kind of an indication that what they're saying, they feel is sort of confidential. They're telling you, but they don't want people hearing what they're telling you. And that's a good sign, right? That because there's depending on, a lot of this comes down to where are you meeting them, and that will provide them with, is this a safe environment to share information or not? I like to meet people in 3 different locations at least once, or at least once in their office to see, what does their office look like? What are the artifacts, things that they have on their walls, like, diplomas where they studied, certificates of appreciation, maybe even artwork of their children. I mean, kind of gives me kind of like what, what from what's important to them from a sense of the professional image, and see how people in the office, relate to them, and how they relate to other people. I mean, is it very professional? Is it more informal? Is it sort of, you know, is the individual kind of arrogant toward the employees, et cetera? Then I want to meet them in their home. I get to meet, if they have a family, meet their spouse, meet their children, also see, what are the hobbies and interests that they have, what is their social, economic uh, background, etc. And also it's good because later on, when I begin to take this person maybe more out for dinners, and you can say, "Hey, I'm going out with my friend Peter," and the wife has already met me, so it's like he's not having an affair with someone. You know what I mean? You know how these things. So it's like those are all things good. I get different optic. What are they like at the office? Another optic. What are they like in their home life? And then very important, getting them away from both home and the office, where they can talk about work and not feel people are going to hear some of the things they might be complaining about. Talk about their family life and share some things that maybe is difficult for them to share with, they can't talk, to their spouse or their children, or they don't have that many friends maybe of that level. We can become really good friends. There's things they tell me that they would never tell anybody else, to be honest with you. It's a relationship that begins which is required really, and for an effective recruiter.
And what I find interesting about that, and a key takeaway from that too, is that really getting to know someone, especially in your situations, is getting to know them in their key environments, that home environment, that work environment, and then taking them away from both of those and seeing how at ease they are, what they might start saying. And it really builds trust because you're seeing them in those different environments. And I think that's important too in work environments or personal environments to put yourself in different situations, or as a leader, put others in different situations to really be able to gauge how they might act if something is situational or a personality trait, how they might thrive, and where you guys can meet in the middle too, if there's that bridge. For you, as you started transitioning out of the CIA, and once you have transitioned, you've started your own company working with corporations, but you've also now written 2 novels. Let's start with the books. What made you decide to write your books?
First of all, I need a small correction. They're not novels, they're nonfiction.
Nonfiction.
Yeah,
Sorry.
because even the title of one though makes it seem like, oh, it's probably a work of fiction, but it's not. These are books that I've written, sort of providing insight into the world of manipulation and deception, and how individuals and organizations can protect themselves. So the first book was written actually when COVID broke out. I started my company just a few months before COVID in November of 19, was it? So I started like in August, and all of a sudden, and I needed to get out. I needed to talk to people. My part of my work, what I wanted to do was to speak at conferences, provide training programs, etc. And I couldn't do that. Everybody was at home, and so I decided, let me write this book. So I wrote it, and the title is Confessions of a CIA Spy: The Art of Human Hacking. Confessions kind of has a double, because since I studied for the priesthood, also the confessions, right? It's kind of like a backstory that a lot of people don't realize, but it was written kind of like the title, this, I am confessing sort of based on my work, how, I was able to breach the security of these organizations overseas by developing these, by targeting individuals, insiders. And so in the book, I go through this methodology of what would a typical threat actor. Now I talk about threat actors can be intelligence services, they can be criminal groups, they can be industrial competitors, they can be activist groups, or even a lone wolf that wants to breach the company for any number of reasons: the theft of proprietary information, the theft of customer or employee data for sale on the dark web, ransomware, to conduct ransomware attacks, or business email compromise, or sabotage. Or there's a lot of different objectives, right? But the methodology is the same. First stage is collecting as much information that you can get that's publicly available. It's referred to in the industry as open source, but it's not controlled information. Today is what information that you could get off pretty much the internet if you do some very creative searches. Once you have that information, the biggest part of that, though, you're identifying potential insiders, people that work there. And in my old work, it was difficult. I mean, you look at an organizational chart and kind of figure out who is who, what's their position, what access they might have. But today, we just go on LinkedIn and do searches on LinkedIn and come up with being able to use search criteria to come up with a short list of candidates. Then instead of meeting with them, like I would, like we call time on target, developing that relationship to learn about their motivations and vulnerabilities. I don't, you don't have to meet with them. You just study their social media profiles and you learn, whether it's LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram, for example. I mean, you can learn everything about them practically. What's their professional goals? It's the LinkedIn is like it's like a resume on steroids, right? To include what are their professional goals, who are their influencers, how they want to come off professionally. Facebook and similar platforms give you everything you want to know as far as their hobbies, interests, sports teams, favorite restaurants, favorite foods, where they travel, who they travel with, where are they going in the future. It's amazing. So much you can learn from individuals regarding their social media profiles. Twitter gets into their mind, hack into their mind. What are their feelings about different things, ideology, politics, their pet, grieves. Instagram, pattern of life. Where are they at a particular time? They're at a restaurant, taking a picture of their food that they're ready to consume. They're at the gym, take a picture, pumping iron. I mean, pattern of life means if I want to bump into them face to face eventually, I know where they're going to be. I know what their patterns are, right? So all this information helps develop that personality assessment profile. So I'm explaining this all in the book, right? How this works, and then I go into the issue of trust. That's the greatest thing for human hackers, social engineers, that people just automatically trust things that are told to them, that they read, that they hear, that are conveyed to them. That's a great factor that we exploit. I say we because I'm training people now and kind of sensitizing them, right? But these are the things that human hackers, social engineers would do. And then there's other influence techniques along the way. Fear, people are contacted. If you don't take care of this right now, it can mean that your credit's going to be ruined. Your child is going to be kidnapped and something's going to happen to them. I mean, fear. It's fear that something bad is going to happen unless I take this action that they tell me I need to take. Authority. They're approached by someone who they believe is an authority, a security officer, policeman, the boss. They're more likely to comply. They're not going to question. Likeable. People are likable. I think this is one of my greatest influence techniques. If people like you, you're likely to do whatever you want them to do, really. And there's other ones too, scarcity. Like if I don't take advantage of this opportunity now, it's not going to happen later. If you go on Expedia, you're doing searches for flights, hotels, every single entry has only 2 left or only 4 left. How can every single one be? Because they don't want you to think. They don't want you to assess the situation. I need to take this action right now without thinking about it. So these are numbers of influence techniques that I also outline. And then I go through a variety of social engineering techniques, which basically is using different types of communication channels to reach out and contact the target, right? That can be email, that can be text messaging, that can be contacting via social media platforms, because they all, like LinkedIn, you can request to connect. And all these also allow you to send and receive messages. So you can be cultivating that relationship, or you can send to that individual, whether it's email, text messages, or messaging services on social media. You can send malicious links or malicious attachments. The same works all the same. But this is more like spear phishing, where instead of sending this out to hundreds or thousands of people, I've studied a specific individual. I know what makes them tick, and I'm almost certain that this is going to get their attention. They're going to click on that link, open that attachment, because this is what they want. They're not going to lose the opportunity. Even if they've received some training, they're gonna do it. And then we can move on to another technique is phishing, which is using a telephone to pretend to be whoever you want to be and contact an individual. And I mean, there's a lot of ways to add credibility to that. Is spoofing the caller ID number. Make it to be the number of what you recognize being from the school where your kids go, or from your boss, or from a client, and then get them in that conversation. They think you're authorized. They think that person's authorized to ask for this information because it's a different person than who's really on the line. And probably some of your audience now have heard about the deep fakes, and one of the biggest ones that's really, really effective is the voice cloning. So it's not just seeing the call number that they recognize, they also hearing the voice of a person that they recognize that voice. So they don't question it at all. They believe that's really the person. And so it's sort of these are sort of the techniques that now with I don't mean to get off topic, but with the advancements in artificial intelligence, deep fakes, it's the same. It's sort of the same means, but it's making it much more efficient and more credible. And the criminals, the threat actors, can just do so much more damage because people are not aware of these types of ploys. And then the final one of the social engineering techniques is that face to face contact. Pretty much can get anybody to do something if I'm looking them in the eye and I develop that trust, face to face. So we need this to get in front of the people, whether we meet them at conferences, trade shows, or call them up to get together with them. There's even one quick story of, and then now let's get to your next question. I just got a passion for this stuff. You can tell. One of the techniques that most people are not aware of, and it's used by intelligence services, criminal groups, is pretending to be a headhunter, calling the individual at their office, and people know that headhunters call, so it's not an unusual thing, and telling them that they're really impressed with their background and believe that they would be a good fit for a client, and they talk about on general terms, the position is a higher position. Compensation much higher than what they're making, more responsibility. And even if they weren't looking for a job, why wouldn't they go and hear about it, right? What are they worth in the marketplace? So they feel there's no harm, right? So they get together with the executive headhunter, the social engineer, who's asking them lots of normal interview questions and also using elicitation to get into a lot of other topics that are a little more sensitive. At the end of that conversation, he knows or she knows a lot about that individual target, about them, as well as the company they work for. It could be a one-time, data dump, or it could be, meet them more times, give more information, or it could be coming back to them. Listen, that opportunity didn't pan out. That other person got that job. Again, that happens with another opportunity. The person is just really frustrated, deflated. And they say, listen, you mentioned at one time that you would be interested in a part-time in freelance consulting, being an independent consultant in the industry. I found the perfect opportunity for you. You can stay in your job, earning your benefits, good pay. At the same time, you can get experience in providing consulting regarding the industry, regarding your company, and get paid well for this. And so, people, they'll do it, and it could go for not just weeks or months, but it can go on for years. And so it's another type of manipulation, this face-to-face engagement that is very, very powerful in our world of human hacking. I can go on forever. That's kind of the book goes through all of this methodology in great detail with examples.
And this is something you're very passionate about, and I love it because you are really trying to help others understand that intelligence and how people are doing things, especially as times are changing, right? As we are on the computer more and more, we get those emails. And like you said, sometimes even though you've gone through the training, it doesn't stick. You click, you're busy, you're just going, it sounds familiar. You're, like you said, the headhunter, if they call your office, might actually, be more understanding than if someone called your phone. I've gotten lots of texts of headhunters via text message reaching out with a role. And I'm like, okay, that's a scam. Um, Especially if it's not even in the industry. I'm like, you didn't even do a great job of that one. Um, like you're tad off. But for you, what is a piece of advice? Because you obviously have your company where you go in now and work with companies and different organizations and different individuals, trying to help them understand this part of hacking and different aspects and what to be on the lookout for. What is something someone with any background can take back to be understanding of if you get a certain message, how to handle that, what to look out for?
Well, first of all, I would say that the reason why most people are so vulnerable is the sort of that would never happen to me. You may hear a story in the press or something about somebody else, but no, that won't happen to me. So they become very complacent and they don't really try to learn more about this and understand this and realize that so much of this is in their hands, right? I mean, it's like anybody could be targeted as a potential victim. And probably the more personal information that's out there about you, the more likely that you become a victim. There are two individuals, one of them, I mean, and both of them kind of have the same, value from a threat actor, whether it's, money that they have or information that they might have access to. One of them there's a lot more information about them compared to the other one. I'm going to go with the one that has a lot of information about them because that's exploitable, right? So it's something to keep in mind when people are on the social media sites, being very, very careful and don't post more than than really you should, because realize that you're potentially opening yourself up. Having good privacy settings also on these social media accounts. But then there's people, and I agree. They say there's so much information out there about them already, and there's been so many data breaches where personal identifying information has been leaked, right? It's been compromised, that threat actors can still use that information, even though the person has been very, very careful in controlling their information. So I think we have to also operate under the assumption that there's enough information out there that can be used by a threat actor to try to contact and manipulate us. So we have to realize that these different approaches can come through. It's not going to happen when we reach out to contact somebody. The danger is when somebody we don't know reaches out to us, and they can use whatever pretext they want. They have studied us potentially. They know how we might respond. They've rehearsed, this so that if we come back with a question, they know how to respond to that. And so it doesn't mean being paranoid about every single communication we receive. But I think where we got to draw the line is the following. It's the ask. If that email, text message, phone call, or whatever, or person that approaches us asks us to do something, and we don't know this person, if by undertaking that action, complying with that action, if it's fraudulent, can lead to very dire consequences for me or for the organization that I represent or work for, that's when I got to stop and I have to assess the situation. And I refer to it as when you get that sort of, let's say proposition, but when you get that sort of instruction or request, stop, verify, then trust. This expression has been around forever, and I still hear it today: trust, then verify. I say no. In these days, if you do that, if you trust then verify in a digital age, it's too late. You clicked on that link or you're giving out that information, and yeah, you can maybe verify that it was fraudulent and not do it again, but it's too late for that first approach, right? So we want to verify, then trust before we undertake that action. And so when I work with individuals, I tell them, some of the things that they can do to safeguard themselves, and also what organizations need to do to ensure that their employees are properly trained, so that they won't allow the social engineers to get them to do something. That basically what we're doing as a social engineer, human hacker, targeting individuals and being able to get around, circumvent the technological controls, policies, and procedures to get that employee to do something. It should never, ever have been permitted, but we can always get around technology. Always. So people rely on technology as being the full safety. Oh, our company is getting this technology that's going to help resolve this problem. It helps, but we are focusing on always getting around the technology. So,
And for you, what is something you've done to leverage technology? Like you said, it helps, and relay that to individuals or companies. But what is something besides technology that these individuals can be leveraging to really, s- stop when that ask comes and know to verify and then move forward?
it's sort of it's sort of needing to, for people to learn, you need certain repetitions, at least of that message, or of in the world of training. It's not just putting out the scenario this can happen, but many times simulating and having individuals tested on that, whether it's phishing simulations or phone calls, whatever, and having people experience that personally and hear about it. It's very important to have testimonials, and I think everybody needs to share more information whether it's an organization or an individual, about something that's happened to them, something that they've experienced, because by sharing those, people are embarrassed to do that. And companies feel that, they'll tarnish their reputation. But by having more testimonials out there, people are gonna be more, it's gonna be more, at the top of their mind, and realize this can happen to me. So we need to have that. And there needs to be incentives in place. You make the right decision, you should be somehow acknowledged or rewarded, for making that right decision. If you make the wrong decision, you shouldn't be punished. But it should be something that's shared, and something that we can all learn from, right? So it's sort of like positive reinforcement. At the end of the day, it's changing people's behavior, which is not easy, but that's what we have to do. We have to change people's behavior. It will only be changed if they, if they buy into it. So for me, pet peeve, when I go to organizations and I see that when they talk about these issues, it's typically a compliance training once a year, check the box. I watch a couple of cheesy videos. And I hope I'm not offending anybody, because I know some companies that I've been to. Watch these cheesy videos, take a test, they get 75%, right? And then they get their certificate. A lot of them are all multitasking. They're doing, they're looking at emails, they're going back and forth. And if they don't get 75%, they can take it again. Eventually they pass, they comply, so they keep their job. They send their certificate to their boss. The boss sends to their boss, hey, we're 100% in compliance for another year. People haven't learned anything. They're not going to change their behaviors, but it's compliance training, versus if it's offered to them as a benefit. This training is beneficial to you and your family to help safeguard your financial security, right? Because at the end of the day, the employees should see it as something that they need to do to take care of themselves and their family, and it will carry over to how they treat these issues in the workplace. So I think that's more of a win-win. But companies are not doing it that way. But I'm trying to be an evangelist, I guess, and having them rethink how they need to train people, at least in this particular area. That's my opinion.
I 100% agree, because I've known companies myself who do that same exact thing, and then they think, oh, it's set. And I've had conversations recently with people where an email has gone out, and I started getting contacted of like, oh, well, I'll do this. It was recently someone tried to clone my email address. But from my experiences, like when I got the call, I was like, did you even look at the email address? And they go, no, it just says Olivia Atkin. And I go, did you click the email address though? Was that my email address? And then they click it and it's not even a real email address. And I'm like, okay, you got to know even just to check that first. And then the email said, I was at a conference and we needed these things for our organization right away. One of the nonprofits I run, and like if someone could go to the store and buy these gift cards or like this or that, whatever it was. So then I got 2 calls from 2 of my board members of like, started getting texts. Oh, you want me to buy the gift card? And I'm like, what are you talking about? What gift card? And they're like, the gift card. I'm like, what are you talking about? And like, I kept going back. I'm like, seriously, what are you discussing? And they're like, the email, I'll send it to you. I go, don't send me the email. First of all, take a screenshot, because you start passing it along. What some people should be mindful too is like the second you start passing those emails that are suspicious along, they're getting more and more contact information. They're getting more points
Oh yeah.
of where it's touching. So I was like, hold up, do not send it to me. You're going to stop. You're going to take a like a phone picture of it so that it doesn't go anywhere. You're not making anyone else vulnerable. Send it to me. I said, but I know I didn't send you anything today. So I can already tell you it's fake. And then I said, the second part of it is click the name, see the email. Oh, the email address is something like, they have all my email addresses. It wasn't any of that. And it was something so weird. And they're like, oh, and I'm like, yes. I go, does your company or have you done any information of like what to look out for? No. And I go, well, right off the bat, this should have looked suspicious. And right off the bat, like there were these 2 or 3 easy things you can check. But
Right.
like you said, it stems from the fact of, we learn a lot of this information too, of what to be on the lookout for, those phone calls, texts, emails from our companies. And if your company isn't leveraging that or having the conversation of, if this comes in, this is how you handle it or what to look at. And like you said, really leveraging it as not a quick training that you press the buttons and you call it a day, but understanding, like, when you understand that, you'll be able to use it in all aspects of your life and
Right.
really being able to leverage it. So I love how you brought up the fact of it's looking at it differently than not just that compliance training.
I like to be very blunt with some people and say, listen, security isn't convenience, but neither is becoming a victim.
Mhm. And I
Yep.
love that. And it's so true. Peter, how can people get in contact with you if they would like to connect with you?
Oh, I encourage contact because I mean, even if it's just want to ask a question about something, or if they want to invite me to come on a webinar or speak at a conference, or provide training at their organization, I welcome it a lot. So probably the two best areas would be my LinkedIn page, because there's a lot of information there. And so it's just my name, um, Peter Warmka, and looking it up on LinkedIn. And then there's my website, counterintelligence-institute.com, that he can also reach me.
Thank you, Peter Warmka, for all of your insight today.
Thank you very much, Olivia. Remember, verify, then trust.
Yes. And a few of our key takeaways from today's conversation, one of those will be that is really understanding where you're at, that ask is, and then the consequences that might align with it, and following it up with taking the steps to stop, verify, and then trust the information
Mhm, mhm.
is really one of those key takeaways, as well as ask yourself the why not. When you begin down the journey, like Peter did, it's, what do you have to lose? A deadline might pass. Okay, so they tell you no, but ask yourself, why not? And what am I going to lose by just trying it, going ahead? And that could be applied to anything, personally or professionally, as well as in a conversation. Sometimes the more questions someone is asking, the more weary or conscious or on guard or feeling like they're not trusting what's being said. So, really, when someone starts asking you a lot of questions, think about for a second, why are they asking me? Am I not providing the information? Are they not absorbing it right? Do I have to pivot the question or the comment? And one thing I love that you brought up too is you try to front load everything. So instead of making things vaguer or bird's eye view from the jump, you start the conversation with giving as much details as possible. So then someone knows they can really trust you, information is valid, and you can continue on with
Mhm.
the conversation. As well as if someone is looking around a lot, it could be a sign of them starting to trust you, but looking to see who's around. Are they able to hold the conversation? But what I loved about that part that you really brought up is, yeah, they can be on guard. That individual could be on guard and they might be wary, but it's not of you, which I think is very telling. It's really, they trust you enough to tell you things that they don't want others to know, which is
Yes.
really important in that as well. As well as LinkedIn can be leveraged to be a resume on steroids. I recently was actually at a conference and someone was like, I don't really use LinkedIn. I don't have it. And I was like, it gives you the ability to put and really show those resume skills, show what you're passionate about, where you want to grow, like Peter said. So, really leverage your LinkedIn account to be that resume on steroids. This was a great episode with our top notch guest, Peter Warmka. Thank you for listening and have a successful day.